The king's had enough. He has finally decided to distance himself from these ongoing claims from quarters, especially of the mainstream media, actually. I would argue pro-Prince Harry and Meghan Markle quarters of the mainstream media, that Charles III is trying to secretly engineer some type of return for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to this country. That King Charles is in some way working in cahoots with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to make this couple who are so hated by the public in some way more politically palatable. I think the truth about this is very nuanced, actually, but Richard Palmer, former Royal Rota reporter, has decided to really try and distance King Charles from this in a new bombshell article for the newspaper, where he writes, Prince Harry seems to be focusing increasingly on the UK and in tune with his father, although much of that is a coincidence rather than coordinated. There's been no discussion so far about a family reunion when he returns to Britain in July. The Royal News Network has backed that, arguing though a personal reconciliation should never be off the table, an institutional one is impossible. Harry needs to realise that his services are no longer required, and he would be best served to grow up and get a good big boy job. But it's Charlotte Griffiths, actually. Now, she's been an interesting protagonist in all of this, hasn't she? Charlotte Griffiths, little Miss G-string, had the bit of fling with Prince Harry, and now is very much in touch with his friends and pushing this whole idea that actually the royal family want Harry back. And there was a lot of controversy over this story in the Daily Mail. They actually had to change the headline to a question mark. Trust me, it's always bad news when your editors insist on a question mark being added to your headline because it means that your story isn't really true. But she writes that one of the king's newest and most trusted aides has vowed to repair the rift between Princes William and Harry to spare the monarch from further great pain. Now, this is Theo Rycroft. He's the former diplomat who became Deputy Private Secretary to the King in February. And she reports that he has made it his, quote, #1 mission and career ambition to reunite Harry and William. Sources say Mr. Rycroft, married to Flora Astor, half-sister of Samantha Cameron, so this is a well-connected dude, believes the situation has become, quote, effing ridiculous and is keen to resolve it urgently for the king's sake. One source said he thinks it's time to knock their heads together. The mood is not wrong. Theo's a very reasonable guy and incredibly nice, and he completely gets that this is a source of great pain to the king and wants to help him resolve it. He sees his job as helping the king resolve it. His determination comes amid speculation the king may meet Harry when he flies to Britain from his California home in July to help prepare for the Invictus Games in Birmingham next year. That would be a big mistake. Don't do it, Charles. But whether Mr. Rycroft can persuade William to meet his brother, too, may be a tall order. Let me tell you, Charlotte Griffiths, it ain't happening. William has allegedly barred any mention of Harry in his presence. That's true, following damaging revelations in his memoir, Spare. Friends of Mr. Rycroft say he has quickly gained influence within the king's inner circle, not simply because of his establishment connections, but because of his reputation as a calm and politically astute operator capable of navigating difficult personalities and delicate situations. Look, honestly, I think right now it would be easier to put Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin in a room together having a hug than Harry and William. So I don't think this diplomat is going to be able to do it, despite all of those credentials, which meant he did do a very good job with the king's state visit.
Has the door finally closed for good? For years, royal watchers have speculated about whether reconciliation between the monarchy and Meghan Markle could ever happen. Would tensions cool? Would old wounds heal? Would the family eventually reunite? But now, explosive new claims are reigniting one of the biggest royal debates yet. Because according to fresh reports circulating among royal commentators, King Charles may have reached a breaking point regarding Meghan Markle. And if the allegations are true, they paint a picture of a relationship more fractured than ever before. When Prince Harry married Meghan Markle in 2018, many believed the monarchy was entering a new era. A modern royal couple. A global audience. A fresh chapter for the institution. The wedding captivated millions around the world. Optimism was everywhere. At the time, few could have predicted how dramatically things would change. Because within just a few years, the fairy tale had transformed into one of the most public family conflicts in modern royal history. The turning point came when Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties and relocated to North America. What followed was a series of highly public revelations. Television interviews, documentaries, memoirs, personal accusations, institutional criticism. And with every new disclosure, the relationship between the Sussexes and the monarchy appeared to deteriorate further. While senior royals largely maintained public silence, the headlines never stopped. Every interview generated controversy. Every statement sparked reaction. Every appearance created fresh speculation. And over time, the possibility of reconciliation began to look increasingly distant.
Griffiths reports that crucially, he is close to William. During his Paris posting, he worked closely with William on several high-profile international engagements, including the Prince of Wales' hugely scrutinised trip for the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral, an event that also saw William meet Donald Trump. But it doesn't matter, because William is clear he is not discussing Harry at all with officials. But one insider said Theo believes that Harry and William need to be forced to shake hands and allow Charles to repair his relationship with Harry. The source adds, I would be very surprised if Harry doesn't see Charles when he is in the UK. Theo would not be one of the many aides at the palace wishing to block a meeting. But while he may be outnumbered after the US visit, he is the most respected man in the building right now. It is unclear whether Harry will bring Meghan and their children to Britain with him in July. Doing so would rely on the Home Office granting his family police protection, which remains under review. A Buckingham Palace source declined to comment. However, someone close to Mr. Rycroft said Theo has never held or expressed the views as claimed. However, Charlotte Griffiths, the ex-bit on the side of Prince Harry, she's a very pretty girl, is standing by her story. While many in royal circles disagree, including Paula Frolic, the woman behind Paula Frolic Uncensored on Substack and YouTube, who says that actually perhaps the most striking revelation in a conversation from a source of hers close to the palace, directly addressing the persistent talk of a Project Thor between Harry and the royal family, was that no one ever wants to see Meghan again. And who can blame them? Paula reports from her source, I spoke to one of my very good sources and no, there is no Project Thor. The reason why is that, yes, the king would like to see his son and his grandson. No one ever wants to see Meghan again, but they understand Harry is fully untrustworthy and so therefore they can't be around him. Alison Boshoff of the Daily Mail, editor-at-large, agreed. And what's interesting about that is, of course, it is her colleague, Richard Eden, at the Daily Mail, who has been pushing this idea of Project Thor alongside Charlotte Griffiths. But she told Paula, I think there are a lot of people who think Harry is very untrustworthy. They may or may not include the king, but there are a lot of voices who don't want to trust Harry under any circumstances, even if it's just him, not Meghan. Paula adds, as for Harry's reported eagerness for reconciliation, Boshoff was characteristically dry. I think the Project Thor is overstated and coming from Harry's side. I think it's another one of those things where Harry puts his wishes out in the media and hope it comes true. Absolutely. She compared it to the endless cycle of stories about Harry being welcome at Sandringham or hoping for an invitation, dispatches from a wish, not a reality. So, Paula Frolic, what is going on here? What is really going on here?
You know, Dan, what is actually going on is Harry and Meghan need to be associated with the real royals again. Again, we were just talking about how nothing they're doing seems to work. And, you know, Meghan, obviously failure after failure, but Harry, who wants to give his life to charity. Unfortunately, as I've spoken to several people who have worked with him in the past, he's not that smart. He's arrogant and he's lazy. So he wants to give his life to charity. But now, at least in the States, not so much in Britain, everyone is looking at Invictus's finances and saying, hey, this is your big charity left. Sandringham blew up, or not Santibali blew up. Africa Parks has rape allegations against it. And now you've got Invictus and Travelist left. Invictus has problems. I've been reporting on that for weeks now, but also Travelist is a little dodgy. I've got a piece coming out on that later today. And he doesn't seem to understand that people just want him, to show up, shake a hand. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't understand that actual charity takes work. And in order to get donations, you have to be actually associated with the royal family. Also, yes, I do think he misses his dad. Yes, I think he looked at the video of William having the best time ever at the football game and probably ate him up inside with actual jealousy and longing for what could have been his life. However, it isn't, he can't really go back. He needs to go back. Yes, he wants to see his dad, but the emotional blackmail that he pulled earlier this year, where he had his representatives say, Harry love to be invited, or would not mind being invited. However, it's basically tied to who else was there and what could happen. And you think, wait a minute, you're not even invited and you're setting your own rules. It's like, hey, Dan, can I come to your house? If you don't have Evian water and kick everyone else out while I'm there, then I can't come. And, despite the fact that you never invited me to begin with. However, it's just the fact that nobody wants to be around him. They understand that recollections will always vary at this point. They also understand that no one can be alone in a room with him. I mean, imagine that. Imagine your mother coming over to visit you and see the flower show, but you can't be alone with her. Someone always has to be there. I mean, it's quite pathetic and sad, but every chance he's given, he F's it up in a massive way. And he does something bizarre, like tell his wife everything, tell Gail King everything, go on ABC and talk about it. Or again, try to bully his father by announcing his wishes via the press, which BT dubs, he of course hates and continually sues.
Indeed, and that's why I actually respect Alison Boshoff for being honest with you about this, Paula, even though she is going against the reporting in her own newspaper. I've been really interested. I mean, I used to be a columnist at the Daily Mail, and there's like a civil war at the moment going on within the Daily Mail itself, because you've got different star reporters pushing their own agenda, and it depends who their sources are. And what's very clear is that Charlotte Griffiths has a lot of sourcing. And by the way, I'm not doubting her sourcing. It comes from a lot of people who are very, very close to Prince Harry and want him to be back in the UK. There's not many of those, by the way, but there are a few that do exist. So I do think she is being genuine, but Alison is right. Very often, this is Harry putting out into the world what he wants to happen, but they're delusional fantasies rather than actually anything that is properly being discussed within Buckingham Palace.
Well, also, let's look at Richard Eden's Project Thaw. That came when a photo randomly dropped, of a Palisade meeting with Meredith. Harry
Meredith Bates, who was the ex, the now departed, but yes, there it is. Wow.
Exactly. In full, probably in full therapy, not paid for by the Sussexes. So this came about because obviously I think Richard Eden's sourcing was great. Here's the deal. A Palisade goes, Meredith is there, they're meeting, and look, we've randomly dropped it to the Daily Mail so they could get a photo. And I think that, again, it is wishful thinking. However, this was also before Australia, where Meghan tried to monetize her trauma closet. This is also before a lot of the Invictus news came down. I think at this point, Invictus is a big story that will tarnish a lot. And I don't know if Charles can afford it to be seen with him. However, you're right. There is kind of a seeming war inside, because like 4 days after Alison Boshoff wrote her piece that nobody really wants to hang out with Meghan anymore, they had a freelancer write, are you kidding? the most powerful women in Hollywood won't let Meghan fail. And it just so happened to be
Mm,
4 Black women who are powerful, not Jamie Kern Lima.
mm.
And it was a freelancer. So notice that Charlotte Griffiths, who is friendly, didn't even write that.
No, but also it was a freelancer who was a Black woman herself, Dominique Hines. So again, there was a particular narrative that was being pushed there. And yeah, I mean, I think the Daily Mail has to get it a bit together, because at the end of the day, there is only one truth. And sure, they can present like different sides, but I think they've got to be clear sometimes what is a Harry and Meghan fantasy rather than what is actually going to happen.
Well, which I think they did by putting in a question mark at the end of
Yeah.
the title, and I mean, I wrote the first story that it was about a month and a half ago that no way Harry was going to be invited to Sandringham. And then, now people are
Yeah.
like, he won't meet him. And of course he won't. I mean, he
Do
can't.
you think there's any, I mean, Paula, you've been right across this Invictus Games story. Do you think there's any possibility that the Invictus Games doesn't go ahead next year, or is there just too much riding on this now, given that the British government has pumped in so much money? It sort of has to go ahead despite the omni crisis.
I think there is a possibility. I
Wow.
think there is. I think that everyone at Invictus, what I've been told by several people, is that they're white knuckling it through and they're just going to try to jam it through. And then at the end, there's going to be a huge reckoning with the organization. However, yeah, there are some people who are saying, it shouldn't go through. Look at Melanie Poole, who the OBE and who was, I think, vice chair of the board, stepped down last week. That's a big sign, Dan, that things are not right. Look at their finances. They've only raised $4 million from 11 anonymous corporate sponsors. Now, the corporate and private sponsorship is supposed to match what the government put in. But right now, this is literally a British taxpayer event, which is a big party for Harry. And oh, by the way, there are some wounded warriors playing games. And historically, in the last couple of years, not a lot of people have gone to go see the actual wounded warriors.
Indeed, indeed. Now, speaking of the Daily Mail, I did enjoy Jan Moi ripping apart, but also celebrating the wedding picture release from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle this week. But let's be honest, it was coming from Meghan, wasn't it? The release of these wedding pictures.
It all comes from Meghan. She thinks she's the social media guru of the family. And so, she never lets anyone forget she had something called the TIG, which I never knew about until, of course, she started dating Prince Harry. And when I did, I looked at it, it was very derivative of Reese Witherspoon, Goop, whatnot, right? So, of course, she's the one behind all this. Harry, I don't even know if he knows how to work out how to
No.
do multiple photos on a
No,
post.
and she's like, it's cool, Harry. Like, yeah, just let me go and attack the social media giants on Monday, and by Tuesday, I'll be using their platforms to release a whole load of our pictures, which we promised everyone would stay private forever. But Jan Moir has described it as behind the royal velvet rope, Paula, and she writes, what should the world's most private celebrity couple do to mark their 8th wedding anniversary? Hide under a rock? Silently toast each other with fine champagne while snuggled under a blanket, or under a blanket media blackout at the very least? Maybe they could bask on the out-of-reach beach, take a hike in the Solitude Mountains, trek along the Quality Time Alone Trail. Or here's a bold idea. Why not go crazy and post dozens of previous and unseen photographs of your incredibly private 2018 wedding for millions of nosy Parkers like me instead? Yes, you were right. That same wedding where the bride and groom strictly enforced a no cameras policy, with guests required to hand over their phones and cameras to ensure Meghan and Harry enjoyed the total privacy they have demanded and exacted from everyone except themselves since day one. For we all know that when it comes to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, privacy is a highly prized territory which they often choose to invade themselves, on behalf of themselves, for the benefits of themselves. They do this when the occasion suits, when the going is tough, when there is mercantile advantage to be had in slyly reminding everyone just how special and royal they are. It seemed a remarkable development for a woman who so desperately cleaves to the shadows unless she has a scented candle or a spaghetti recipe to sell. But what can I say except that I am here for her? What joy! Never in the history of staid Windsorship has there been such a candid peek behind the velvet rope of a major royal event. Princess Anne grilling sausages at Balmoral or Queen Elizabeth taking tea with Paddington Bear have got absolutely nothing on a squiffy-looking Prince Harry and a static Meghan suction-kissing like a pair of randy squids at the Frogmore House evening reception. Elsewhere, there are shots of the couple enjoying some privacy in the vicinity of St. George's Chapel immediately after the ceremony. There are images of the private afternoon wedding reception with Meghan giving her new husband that special 20-pie saucer eye gaze she learned on the first year of her starlet acting course at Bigham College, Hollywood, along with intimate shots of the glamorous twosome sharing their first dance as a married couple. There is also more recent down-home footage of Harry presenting Meghan with an anniversary cake and Meghan giving Harry a statue of two penguins to symbolise their love. Perhaps not really because the exhibits quite a few penguin characteristics. Flightless, thick, blubber, take your pick, but apparently because they once dressed up as penguins for a fancy dress party. Why has Meghan done this? Do the wedding images capture the rapture of the day or a raptor at play? Perhaps it is because all the Sussexes have left to sell is themselves. More cynical types might see the release of these photographs, which will be republished by newspapers around the world, as yet another crafty marketing strike designed to remind possible commercial partners, streaming companies, and jam jar manufacturers of the seam of pure old English gold that runs deep in the Sussex mind. They are royal, and don't you ever forget it. Some of the images are indeed happy and glorious, for we were all back in the land of enchantment then, with no idea of what lay ahead. Back then, Meg World was new and Harry looked happy. We didn't know about the bridesmaids, tight fights, the incident with the dog bowl in the night, the meltdown when Kate didn't want to lend Meghan her lip gloss. And Paula, I do wonder how you felt about seeing these pictures, which do show a totally different side of the royal wedding. Like, this wasn't a classy affair.
No. I mean, Dan, all we have to do is bring up that one photo of Harry getting his face smushed by Meghan while she clasps her hands around his face and leans in, and you just go, oh, I don't know about that. But Jan makes a really good point of that they are there just to sell themselves. But the problem is, I spoke to a PR directing, marketing, branding expert, and she told me that the problem is no one is there to buy anymore. Nobody wants to buy them. They will all look, they will all watch the car crash, but it's okay. We don't want them. We just want a looky-loo. Kind of like Jan, and it's interesting too what I found about these photos. There are a lot more photos of Meghan alone. Yes, there's some interesting things in the background, as you pointed out, with Harry looking like he's having a stern word with Catherine's nanny, but there are no pictures of her mother. Usually on a bride's wedding day, you have photos of a bride and her mother being very close, the mother helping her, whatnot. There are no photos of any of the royal family, none of Prince Charles close up. There is one where he's in the background, and I get it. Maybe they're trying to respect the royal family, but where's the photo of Doria? Instead, they put up this weird photo of Elton John singing at a piano that is reminiscent of the time he sang at Diana's funeral. It was so weird. Also, it's your 8th anniversary. It's not a big deal. What are they going to do for their 10th?
And you hated this wedding. You have moaned about this wedding. Look.
Well, also, it's not your real wedding, because didn't you tell Oprah you were actually married 3 days before?
That was a big fat lie.
Was that photo?
That was a big fat lie. But no, I think, Paula, it's like everything with them. They have totally changed their view on this wedding. They loved the wedding, then they hated the wedding. Now they look at the wedding and think, oh God, things were good back then. We didn't even have to pay for this. Like, 100%. What were we thinking? We could never afford a wedding like that today. So it's a bit like not only trying to remind the world, it's trying to prove to themselves this is what we used to have. It's quite sad because life changes, right? It's like I used to be in the mainstream media where we had massive budgets and huge cameras and everything, but you can't want to harken back to an old life. And the problem is Meghan has so many regrets actually about what she's done because she has played it so badly. And we know Harry has more than a few regrets.
I actually think Meghan's only regret, yeah. I mean, I actually think Meghan's only regret is the fact that she doesn't have access to the free castles, to the free weddings, the free parties, and the frippery around the royal family. I think she genuinely hated everything else, but she really liked, as we know, she loves a freebie. And she really liked a free wedding. She really liked everything that the taxpayer could afford her. And yeah, she's probably looking back on that going, dang it, I wish we still had that. However, Harry, I think, looks back on it differently and thinks, dang it, I wish I still had my family and my friends.
Now, royal commentators claim frustration within royal circles has continued to grow. Not necessarily because of one event, not because of one interview, but because of the cumulative impact of years of public conflict. For many observers, the issue is trust. Once trust is damaged, rebuilding it becomes extraordinarily difficult, especially within an institution built on discretion, loyalty, and confidentiality. And according to numerous royal analysts, that loss of trust remains the single greatest obstacle standing between Harry, Meghan, and meaningful reconciliation. But what makes these latest claims so explosive isn't simply the criticism. It's the suggestion that attitudes inside royal circles may have hardened permanently. For years, some royal supporters believed that time would eventually heal the divide, that family bonds would overcome public disagreements, that private conversations would achieve what public headlines could not. But increasingly, commentary surrounding the monarchy points toward a different possibility, a future where distance becomes the new normal. Not dramatic confrontation, not public feuding, simply separation. A quiet acceptance that both sides now occupy completely different worlds. And if that perception is accurate, it could represent one of the most significant developments in the ongoing royal saga. At the heart of this controversy lies a fundamental conflict of values. The monarchy prioritizes continuity, tradition, institutional stability, public duty. Harry and Meghan have emphasized personal freedom, individual expression, media transparency, and independence from traditional royal constraints. Neither perspective exists without supporters. Neither perspective exists without critics. But these competing visions make reconciliation extraordinarily difficult. Because they aren't merely disagreements about events. They're disagreements about principles. Meanwhile, public opinion remains deeply divided. Supporters of Meghan argue she has faced years of unfair criticism and relentless scrutiny. They believe many royal controversies have been exaggerated by media narratives and hostile commentary. Critics argue the Sussexes themselves fueled much of the conflict through repeated public disclosures and criticism of the institution. Both sides remain convinced they're right. And that polarization continues driving extraordinary public interest in every new development. Which means even unverified reports and insider claims can generate enormous attention almost instantly. Because for many people, the Harry and Meghan story is no longer simply a royal story. It's become a cultural debate. And the real question now is, has reconciliation become impossible? Or are the reports of complete rejection overstating a situation that still remains private behind palace walls? At its core, this isn't really about one headline. It's about trust, family, loyalty, and the long-term consequences of decisions that changed the course of modern royal history. Because while public controversies eventually fade, the impact they leave on personal relationships can last for years. And perhaps that's the most important part of this story. Not what was allegedly said, but what it reveals about a family that remains divided long after the headlines first began. If you enjoy in-depth royal analysis, palace drama, and behind-the-scenes insights into the biggest stories surrounding the monarchy, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the royal story is still unfolding, and the next chapter may be even more surprising than the last.